The party started like so many others. There were 10 or so of us couples, mostly childless so far, all of us professionals or self-employed, and most of us categorized as upwardly mobile. The youngest was Sophie. I think she was about 23, and the oldest was Ted, who had recently celebrated his 33rd birthday. The rest of us sat somewhere in the middle, as did myself, Mike Lee, and my lovely wife, Jenny Lee. The party took a somewhat unusual turn when our hosts, John and Kathy, began telling us about their recent vacation in the Canary Islands, how gorgeous the beaches there were, and how relaxed the local dress code was. Yes, you heard right, the dress code. Most of the girls on the beach were topless, John enthuses, grinning at the memory of it. And by the hotel pool, Kathy added. How do you react to that, I ask you? And you, Kathy? One of the wives asked, breaking the ominous silence, anticipating what all the husbands were probably thinking. Well, when in Rome, she grinned mischievously. But you were in Spain. The Canary Islands are part of Spain, not Italy, Claude interjected, but he was always a bit of a tightwad. Take any pictures? Inquired Jack carelessly, who was thinking much faster than Claude, and I could have sworn that everyone in the room leaned forward, eager to hear the answer. Made a few, John threw in, trying to feign disinterest. I printed them out, Katie added, picking up a book that had been lying idle since we'd gotten there. Ignored, but suddenly we were the center of attention, and we guys were cursing ourselves for not considering the damn thing sooner. Look, here's one of the pictures we took on the first day, Sweet Katie continued, and I, like the rest of you, pitched forward to get a better view. And this is the hotel. This is the view from our window. This is the dining room. This is a picture of the donkey we saw. This is one of... And so it went on ad infinitum, all of us making pertinent, albeit somewhat mundane comments, until Kathy began to bore us. Well, that's it, Kathy finally announced, putting the book back on the table. But you're only halfway through, objected Claude, perhaps the only one of us who was actually enjoying watching. Shut up, Claude, muttered Jack, who was always observant and never missed an opportunity. Well, the others are a bit private, Katie whispered, flapping her eyelashes rather tokenistically. I don't think I should show them to you. Translation, though I think even Claude guessed. They're pictures of me with my breasts on display, and they're sitting there, teasing you by daring you to look. Kathy, her husband called out to her at that moment, could you go into the kitchen and help me with this damn car? If you'll excuse me, she giggled, blushing visibly, and retreated into the other room. What's a man to do? Well, you know. And I know, but neither of us was ready to make the first move, especially with 2 or 3 of our wives standing there watching our discomfort. For God's sake, at least one of you look at him, one of those wives, my wife Jenny, declared as it happened to my surprise. It was only a split second, but Jack, the dirty bastard, beat me to it. Fucking hell, Jesus, wow, screaming shit. Flipping through the pages, we got a lot of comments. The early shots of Katie in a tiny bikini went by quickly, and page after page the shots got bolder and bolder. Katie topless, lying on her back. Katie, a lovely girl, topless again, but this time reading a book, and the bulges of her naked breasts partially visible. Katie, still topless, lying on her side, her arm carelessly thrown over her bare breasts, almost hiding them. And then it gets even better. Katie is lying on her back, topless this time, and her bare breasts are clearly visible. Katie kneels on the sand, her breasts hanging there quite splendidly. Katie stands up, this time at full height, quite blatantly showing off her breasts, with quite impressive results. Katie, this time clearly in the pool, stood in just her bikini and appeared to be chatting amicably with 3 young guys none of us knew, as if this was a completely normal, everyday situation. There were other shots, the last of which was a close-up of Katie's suntanned bare breasts, the smooth dimples on her skin clearly visible. It was Claude who put into words what we were all undoubtedly thinking. "Just look at her breasts," he commented, and who could we disagree with that opinion? No, the evening did not turn into an uncontrolled orgy, and none of the women dropped a single article of clothing. We guys had the unexpected pleasure of looking at pictures of our buddy's beautiful and somewhat underdressed wife, and to my surprise, so did the couple of wives left with us. One of them was my wife, Jenny, and that, friends, is where this little story took an unexpected turn. "You liked that, didn't you?" Jenny asked me when we eventually reached the shelter of our own home. "Yeah," I hummed in response. "It was a good party." "You know what I'm talking about, Mike," she continued, smiling and not letting me off that easy. "About this." "Yeah, that. Nice pictures. Nice bust." "Can't argue with that." "Maybe better than mine?" I'm no fool, but thankfully I didn't have to lie to answer that question. "Your breasts are gorgeous," I grinned lustfully. "Do you think your friends would agree?" "I'm sure they would agree, but—" "Maybe we should find out," Jenny interrupted me teasingly. "What? It's bedtime," she declared. "We'll talk about it tomorrow." Damn it. Tomorrow had come. It usually does, but Jenny never mentioned her comments from the previous night, and frankly, I was too nervous to remind her. We left for work, came home, had dinner, and there was a nervous tension in the air that I didn't want to confront. "Well," Jenny sighed, "we can't keep pretending. What are you thinking?" "About what?" Pretty pathetic, and the look she gave me showed she agreed with that opinion. "About those pictures last night," Jenny finally spoke up. "That was a setup." "I guess so," I agreed. It was pretty obvious. Katie knew perfectly well that we wouldn't be able to keep from peeking. "She wasn't the only one. John was aware of it too and wanted you all to see the pictures," she continued. "How do you feel about that?" "That's up to him," I replied with a shrug. "If he wants us to look at Katie's breasts, I'm not complaining." "I'm not talking about them, Mike. I'm talking about us." "About us?" I muttered, starting to worry about where this conversation was going. "Yes, honey." She smiled sweetly at me. "How do you feel about other guys seeing my bare breasts?" "We've never been to Spain, Jenny. We don't have pictures like that." "Then we'll have to compromise, won't we, Mike?" "You mean—" "Yes, Mike," Jenny interrupted me. "That's exactly what I mean." Oh, shit! That got me thinking and kept me awake that night. Jenny just burst into fits of giggles every time I tried to broach the subject. The next day, Saturday, out of the blue, she brought it up again. "Have you thought about it, Mike?" asked Jenny over breakfast. "A little," I admitted, this time not feigning ignorance. "But I don't really want my buddies to see you topless." "Why not?" she asked in a tone that suggested it was a sincere question. "Some men like it when other men see their wives half naked. Why not you?" "I have no idea. Maybe jealousy," I replied, feeling unsure of my position. "You're not saying you feel like showing off your breasts to other guys, are you?" "I guess so," she sighed, watching my reaction. "I think I like that idea. I can understand why Kathy would like it, but you can't seem to see it from John's point of view." "Explain," I offered. "Explain to me why you like the idea." "It's actually quite simple," Jenny began. "Men like to look at women, don't they? At beautiful women." "Of course. It's natural." "But it's equally natural and quite fortunate that women also like to be looked at." "I think I can agree with that," I agreed. "But not necessarily in the nude." "Some do like it," she remarked. "Some girls like it." "They're exceptional," I stated. "You'd be surprised, Mike, how many girls would jump at an opportunity like this if it presented itself and they could get away with it, honey," she surprised me, and I decided not to risk asking her if she was one of them. "Look at the videos you like so much on the internet. The college girls on spring break they have there. They seem to be flying in to compete in wet t-shirt contests, and half of them end up wearing less. They must be drunk." "Maybe sometimes Mike is," Jenny continued seriously. "But drinking just lowers your inhibitions. It doesn't make you do anything you don't really want to do." "Good point," I agreed. "But you've never done anything like that." "Never had the opportunity," she giggled. "But a voyeur exhibitionist is so much more than that. It's almost part of the fabric of our society." Now that's a statement. "Miniskirts," she blurted out. Tight tops, bare breasts, revealing cleavage, high heels even in their way. Girls don't dress that way for health, you know, and rarely for comfort. They dress this way because they want to be looked at and admired. And lusted after, I laughed, enjoying where this conversation was going. Exactly, Mike, my wife picked up on my comment. Girls can look attractive without showing much flesh, but it's much more powerful when we do. You like it when I wear short skirts, don't you? Of course, I agreed cheerfully. You have great legs. And you like it when I go out without a bra, don't you? You know I do, I agreed again, though a little more wary than before. I like the way it looks. In my opinion, you don't need it. And you like the way men look at me. You like the way my breasts sway, don't you? You get pleasure from other guys looking at me and being jealous of you, don't you? I shrugged in acknowledgement, unable to deny it. My Jenny in high heels, in one of her tiny miniskirts and a loose top that allowed her C-cup braless breasts to ripple freely, was a sight worth seeing. An awful lot of guys enjoyed this treat, and I had to admit I always got a hell of a buzz out of it. So what's the problem with letting them see a little more? She asked a very awkward question. Depends on how much more, I replied, feeling myself getting sucked into her way of thinking, and not really sure how I felt about it. Just a little more for starters, Mike, she said with almost a pleading tone in her voice. For the last year or so, I've been wearing shorter and shorter skirts, and you've never once raised a single objection. Frankly, it excites me, and now I think I want to feel free to wear more revealing clothes when I go out. Nothing slutty, I hummed, not admitting that I had actually noticed her skirts getting shorter and shorter lately, and I liked it a lot. I don't do promiscuous, Mike, she grinned, knowing she had more or less won the argument already. I'm not going to do anything to embarrass you, and I'm not going to expose my bare breasts in front of our friends. I just want to show a little more flesh. Maybe wear clothes that give more of a hint of what's underneath. Sounds like this is all leading up to a shopping trip, I laughed. I'm afraid, Mike. I've already started, I snapped my mouth shut. If you want, I'll try on my new top for you. Gulp! Swallowing deeply and taking a big breath, Jenny happily scurried out of the room to try on her new top. Damn it! I growled as she stormed back into the room a few minutes later. The tight, low-cut jeans and high-heeled boots took quite a while to get used to, but the top? What do you think? Asked Jenny, her eyes sparkling. It's, interesting, I mumbled, trying to regain my sense of balance. You don't like it? She replied, her face lowered in disappointment. I like Jenny, I admitted. I'm just resigned to the fact that it's not enough. It covers everything you need, she chirped, happy again, spinning in a circle so I could look around at the whole ensemble. And indeed, it kind of did. As if it wasn't. The thing, which I don't know what to call it other than a top, was made of black lace material. Loose-fitting, it buttoned at the neck, and apparently nothing else held it together. The back flared open as she moved, exposing her graceful bare back and confirming that she wasn't wearing a bra, as if the way her loose breasts bounced beneath the top hadn't already made that obvious. It wasn't see-through, though it hinted rather strongly that it could have been so in the right light, and if it had been any other color than black. Nice. You like it then? I like it, I confirmed. My heart sank as I glimpsed the side of her breasts as the top opened even wider than before. How about taking me to the pub for a drink? Suggested Jenny, and squealed with delight when I agreed. Oddly enough, it was Jenny who had the first nerves to give out as we got ready to go out. She decided she would wear a light coat to the pub, just in case, as she put it. We ran into any of the older neighbors. I can think of a few who wouldn't complain, but would have let her do it anyway. Then we got to our local pub, and she chickened out again when she realized how many of our friends would be there, judging by the cars parked out front. Maybe we should go to the Red Lion, she muttered uncertainly, her earlier bravado leaving her. You prefer beer there, don't you? As you wish. It's always a bit quieter in there, I agreed, knowing full well that beer had nothing to do with her desires, and actually feeling somewhat relieved that all my tipsy buddies wouldn't be trying to sneak a peek at my wife's breasts. Once inside, Jenny hurried over to a vacant table conveniently located in the far corner and, securely wrapped in her coat, sat there waiting for me to arrive with the drinks. "Cowardly?" grinned I, holding out to her the glass of white wine she had asked for. "No," she snapped back, looking around nervously. "May I take your coat, dear?" I continued to tease her, confident by then that it just wasn't going to happen, and that as soon as we finished our drinks, we'd head back home. "No," replied Jenny, as I expected, and for the next 20 minutes we sat sipping our drinks and occasionally interjecting remarks about other customers, carefully avoiding the subject of her coat. "Another beer, Mike?" she marveled when I set my empty mug back on the table. "I'll get it, honey." She surprised me even more, jumping to her feet before I'd even confirmed my desire for another pour. Not that there was any doubt about that. If she surprised me, Jenny was going to shock me. "It's a little hot for that coat," she muttered as if to herself, unzipping it and placing it carefully on the bench next to where I was sitting. "Are you sure about this, Jenny?" I gasped, my inside suddenly doing a somersault as I saw more than a brief glimpse of her right breast, which shouldn't have been on display when she bent over. "No," she replied, apparently sincerely, as a huge blush appeared on her cheeks. "Maybe you shouldn't, Jenny," I wheezed, my throat suddenly dry. "I can see your breasts when you bend over." "Then you'd better be careful when I bend over, hadn't you?" his wife hissed, leaving me speechless as she collected our empty glasses and headed for the bar. Her nervousness made her walk unsteady, balancing on her high heels, and Lord only knows what it did to her rampant breasts. All I know is that a silence slowly descended on the group of guys gathered around the bar as one by one they realized Jenny's appearance in their midst. I'd observed more than once the effect her tight jeans and covered ass had on guys, but she wasn't wearing a top like she was now. If the sexy stripe between her top and jeans didn't get their attention, the rippling of her loose breasts surely would. Then, already wide-eyed, their eyes nearly popped out of their eye sockets when she walked past them, as they noticed that the top she wore was practically backless, and it didn't have much in the way of sides either. She could have slipped into a gap in the nearest part of the bar, but no. My Jenny clamped the bit between her teeth and walked, swaying, stomping, or whatever you want to call it, almost the entire length of the bar, milking it until two astonished young lads made room for her, hardly believing her luck. Two young guys who suddenly found themselves very popular as the motley bunch of men on either side of them suddenly wanted to join in their conversation, to become their best friends. Comments such as, "Have you seen their breasts, Fred? Look at her ass. She's not wearing a bra. You could call that a top. I can see her bust." These words came to my anxious ears as I watched the mass of excited men crowded around her. "Give the lady some room, boys," I heard the bartender warn just as I was about to take my life in my hands to save her. And thankfully the crowd moved back a step, leaving me a gap through which I could see my beautiful wife. Expecting her to look worried, I was surprised to see her smiling and laughing at some of the things the men were saying to her. Her frequent downward glances hinted pretty strongly at what most of the comments were probably referring to. So I sat there, and sat there. I sat there and got a little angry, but not because of the attention to my wife, but because I was still waiting for my beer. Then that too was sorted out. "Here's your pint, mate," I heard suddenly beside me as the bartender, unnoticed by me, appeared beside me. "It's on the house and another if you need it." "That's my wife up there," I muttered somewhat redundantly. "What's going on?" "She's fine, buddy," the bartender assured me. "They're not bad guys here, and she's not going to come to any harm, and it's really good for my bar. Maybe I should go check on her." "Maybe you better not," he advised me. "I already said they're not bad here, but this girl is very popular, and I don't think they want to lose her." "But that top she's wearing," I muttered, throwing my hands up, not knowing what else to say. "Right, buddy," he nodded in agreement. "I better get back in there and make sure those bastards don't rid her of him." "What?" "Enjoy your pint, mate." It seemed like an hour or more had passed, but it probably wasn't, as I sat there drinking my pint and the third one that came along, while Jenny behaved herself behind the bar, giggling at what the guys were saying to her, playfully tossing her hair and staying agile enough to let her breasts ripple. A couple times, one of the patrons risked a hand and pulled her top to one side, but she laughingly pushed their hands away. Some, it should be noted, were more successful than others. An untold number of phone cameras flashed every time a brazen bust stuck out. "I really have to go, boys," I heard her call over the din, and to my relief, "I think my husband has had enough for one evening." She playfully waved off requests to stay a while longer and squeezed through the crowd, heading toward my table. "Ready, dear?" she demanded. "Yes, Jenny," I muttered. "When are you coming back, Jenny?" Several people exclaimed simultaneously, obviously recognizing her name. "Maybe tomorrow," she answered them. "Promise," one of the admirers asked. "I promise." "Leave us something to make sure you'll come back." One bright spark went off in one head, and everyone around them fell silent, sure they were all thinking the same thing. "What do you think, Mike?" asked Jenny, smiling widely, her face flushed with excitement. I just shrugged, unable to think about logic anymore. "Here we go, guys," Jenny laughed, unbuttoning the clasp around her neck and shaking her bare breasts in front of them before spreading the tight top over her head and tossing it into the crowd. "I'll take that, boys," I heard the unmistakable voice of the bartender snatch the little garment from the hands of the guy who'd caught it. "This is going in the trophy case behind the bar." Perhaps it was this distraction that gave the two of us a chance to avoid drawing attention to ourselves. Jenny apparently wasn't as eager to escape as I was. My attempts to slip quietly and stealthily down the main street to where our car was parked were severely spoiled by Jenny, who waved and called out to practically everyone we passed, and the fact that she was topless by then apparently didn't bother her too much. We managed to get to the car without major incident, and I vetoed her giggling suggestion that we stop by our usual restaurant that we'd rejected earlier for one last drink. "Sorry about last night, Mike," Jenny greeted me when I joined her for breakfast the next morning after a somewhat stormy night. "I don't know what came over me." "It's nothing," I assured her, trying to suppress a smirk at the memory of my wife standing there in high heels, tight jeans, and with her magnificent breasts in full view, surrounded by her admirers. "Except you lost your top." "We promised we'd go back and buy it, didn't we?" she replied with a teasing smile. "But you don't have anything that fits," I teased back. "Yes, I do," she teased. "You haven't seen the little denim miniskirt I bought yet, have you?" "And what top would you wear with it?" I demanded, laughing out loud at her sass. "Well, the one I left at the pub, of course," my wonderful wife Jenny giggled sexily. "You mean," I muttered, imagining her waltzing into the pub in high heels and a miniskirt and demanding her top back, and I was just blown away. "Why not?" she cooed. "Last night was fun, wasn't it?" "Wouldn't you?" "I could have. You wouldn't have been able to." "Could have." "Tonight?" "Why not?" "Without a bra?" "Of course not." "Panties?" "Not necessarily. Your choice." "Oh, shit."